Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream, coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. Very happy to be here with you. Very happy that we are getting a chance to chit-chat, hang out, connect a little bit. You can maybe hear the loud sounds of my puppy going crazy on some dog chow in the background. My wife is over here resting, meditating in our loft bed. It's a lovely Monday, and I'm happy to be here with you. Folks, very excited that we get to spend a little time together, and we get to do a little meditation together, especially. We're doing my favorite kind of meditation, which is what I call life practice, and it has to do with cultivating a sense of joy or awe or deep, tactile, experiential verve for the existing experience itself. So where are folks coming from? Where is everybody? Hey everybody, nice to see you. Where is everybody coming from? Where are you? Love to connect and find out where folks are joining us from. I realized something. My wife, just before we began, asked if I could do her a favor, and then we began. It's not a time-sensitive request, is it? Wife questions. I think she can't hear me anymore. I think she's probably meditating. Good morning, Jean from Brooklyn. Nice to see you. A little liner tuning in from Toronto. Excellent to be here with you. Thanks for joining. Let's see what else. Folks, excited for today's meditation. Excited for a little bit of reprieve, but also a little bit of interest. This, to me, is the reason this is my most interested, or the meditation I'm most interested in is because it feels really good. It feels really satisfying, typically. Okay, so Julius says, good afternoon from Vienna, Austria. Welcome to the stream from Austria. Great to have you here, as always. What else, folks? What else is going on for people? Tell me about your Monday. What was your weekend like? What did we do on this weekend? Raquel and I, we sang a little. Oh man, I wish I had I wish my, because I'm streaming from a PC, but all my stuff is like Mac stuff. We went on this little tour of our neighborhood. This is such a dumb way to show this stuff, but we went on a tour of our neighborhood and just took pictures of everything that was visually interesting in our neighborhood. And there's just like so much stuff. I'm trying to get a good angle here. Like so many little details, architectural details that were like so interesting that we had never even noticed before. There's some nice flowers in there, all this stuff. But mainly we're looking at architectural details because we're redoing our space. And there's just so much texture. Sorry, my phone is jingle jangling here. There's so much texture in all of these different spaces, like these different hoods and this window that was like, I wish I could zoom it in for you, but it's going to go out of focus. But this beautiful, oval window, which is just so much thoughtful detail. Oh man, it's like it's a beautiful stained glass window. I don't know if you can see this, but it's rounded itself. Incredible. Anyway, that's just in my neighborhood. Welcome here from greetings from West Virginia. Welcome, Nate. Great to see you. I'm always reminded that you are right next to the Bhavana Center. Great place to retreat when retreats come back. Brian, good morning from New Orleans. Great to see you here, 6024. Good times for all. So, folks, we're going to be meditating, and we're going to have a good old time. We're going to meditate for 25 minutes. And if you're new to meditation, that probably sounds crazy, but that 10-minute crap. No, I'm just kidding. 10-minute meditations are great. But, we're actually starting a new business, and there's this sort of the bane of my existence. Not really. I mean, it's just way overly dramatic. We're using 10-minute meditations, but I was going to say the bane of my existence is this thing that like meditations are 10 minutes long. And it seems like this very common thing, which is that's how much time people feel like they're willing to do it. So the point is, trust me, you'll be able to survive 25 whole minutes. Greetings from Kingston, Ontario. Welcome, Rory. Great to have you here. Great to see you. You look like the lens of a camera, but other than that, looks great. I'm just imagining the lens of the camera with like a little pointed beard. That's a good idea, is actually imagine people's facial features on the camera itself. That's funny. it's funny how much we're going to be getting into this today a little bit, but how much mental seeing is involved when you're doing this, talking to someone. I love this comic. He reminds me of your neighborhood photos, appreciating the common details. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. Let's save this link, or we'll come back to it after the wait, I love this. Oh, comic, meaning like it's a comic book. I was like, oh, I thought it was a comedian. Yeah, we'll take a look at these. This is I feel like maybe I've seen these before. Anyway, we'll take a look at those after the stream. Okay, folks. So what we're going to do here, we're going to find a nice position that we can maintain for the duration of the sit. If you're new to our meditations, we do things in a particular way. I'm going to encourage folks to stay entirely still for the duration of the practice, with two exceptions. When I say entirely still, aside from involuntary movement like breathing, no movement. Two exceptions. One is you want to move. And so that's a pretty big exception, but I want you to wait 30 seconds, maybe a minute, a number of breath cycles between you do so, and when you make a movement, do so mindfully. You don't want to break the momentum of the mindfulness at all, because it cascades, it expands exponentially if you don't break it. And then the other one is, if you feel overwhelm is sort of creeping up, you want to head off overwhelm way before it gets to an 11. You want to head it off at like a 4. So go ahead and jiggle a little, make an adjustment, etc. But yeah, that's the general breakdown here. Okay, folks, so find that nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. Oh, whack the mic here. No, forgot to bring any water today, so I'm going to be choking the whole way. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be fine. Don't worry. Don't stop worrying. Stop worrying. It's fine. Okay, folks, when you're ready, we will begin. Beep up, beep up, up, up. Am I forgetting anything? Nope. I think we're good. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. Each time we arrive at a meditation, we arrive with the momentum of all of the previous moments. And the way that we escape the gravitational pull of all of that momentum is simply by knowing it, experiencing it clearly. So beginning by feeling the energy level of the body, lots of need to move the body, lots of agitation, or perhaps the body is sleepy, tired. Checking in on the speed of the mind. Is the mind agitated, bouncing around quickly from one sensation to another, easily distracted? Or is the mind foggy, sleepy, drifting towards unconsciousness? And somewhere between these two is a balanced mind. And we can use the opposite pole, we can use a little bit of wakefulness if we're too sleepy, a little bit of restfulness if we're too agitated. And simply beginning by feeling the body breathing. And as we do this, with the in and the out breath, physically relaxing the body. Relaxing the large muscle groups, the neck and shoulders, the arms and hands, the chest and back, the belly, the hips, the legs, the feet. And also relaxing all the way down to the fascial level, the place where the muscle itself meets the bone. As though if we let go deeply enough, these two would simply separate and the body would just float apart. And getting a general sense of the overall experience of the body. What is the overall experience at this moment? If we're pulled into any particular sensation, just opening up to feel that among all of the other body sensations. And it can take a moment for us to find the part of the mind that can hold our general overall body experience. This is our awareness. Taking a moment to simply stay with that overall experience. And of course, at times the mind will drift. This is not a problem. This is the nature of the mind. So simply bringing it back. And staying with the practice, I'd like you to allow the head to just slightly tilt downward, allowing the eyes to stay closed if we're practicing with the eyes closed, and to notice that there's a sense of a body extending out below. There's the legs and feet way down there. There's an arm on the left and an arm on the right. There's the neck, sort of close, much closer, almost as though it's slightly behind, a little back. And there's the nose that's right there in front of us. So staying with this awareness, you can allow the head to find a more neutral position. Just noticing that the sense of a body extending out below is quite clear if we attend to it. And this is primordial. This is essential for a living being to survive, at least the kind of living being that we are. And we typically think of our lives in such a small scale. Our day, our week, our big, long goals, our childhood, etc. But it's rare that we recognize that all of our experiencing is part of a much longer trajectory, a much longer movement of momentum. So the ability of this mind to have a sense that there's a body extending below, or even a sense that there is an environment around us. You may notice this now, the sense that wherever we are, the mind is mirroring our overall environment to give us a sense of stability, location. And this is to give us a sense of the kind of stability that might allow us to survive. But what we're in direct contact with is the end, or the current end, of an evolutionary development. And if we use this same mental factor, our imagination, the place where we see memory, planning, fantasy, notice what happens when I say certain words. The mind will flash images of these words. Without even trying, if I mention the first life as it unfolded deep in the heat vents of the ocean billions and billions and billions of years ago, the mind will produce images to help us make sense of these words. if I describe that this early single-celled life became more complex into multi-celled organisms, the mind will flash these images, often as though they were right in front of us. Typically, our memory, planning, fantasy, this activity of the mind occurs as though it were somewhere in front of the eyes, as though we were looking at a kind of screen. So if I begin to describe rudimentary fish, an evolutionary step forward, the mind will produce an image that will come and dissolve, arise and pass. So let's observe this technology that's been developing since this time. Not only does it give us this ability to imagine, to understand, but it itself is this same force. Life has expressed itself in the form of various bodies, various creatures, each of which has its own patterns and designs and shapes, functions. And here we see the functioning of an ordinary human body-mind, a mind that can imagine, but to recognize that this imagining, this sense of space, a sense of location or arrangement that the mind does, that this is life itself. This is life expressing itself in the form of a mind. And what we're experiencing is this same force that, through sheer tenacity, pulled itself out of the ocean, began to learn its way on the land, found its form in simple mammals, that changed eventually into simple primates and complex primates. Into the various forms of sapien. And eventually into this shape. We can imagine this, we can understand it, we can hear the narrative. Can we observe this force, life itself expressing itself? Like an unbelievably detailed and complex jellyfish, taking all of these shapes, these forms, showing us an imagined history. Life itself expressing itself, spilling out into this particular moment. Experiencing and appreciating the complexity of this mind which experiences the world, our sense of self, our sense of inside and outside, self and other, all of our ambitions, all of our plans, even the rudimentary sense of a body. All of it is an expression of this same unbroken chain. We have direct experiential contact with that moment, that impossible moment of the creation of life. And here it is expressing itself in the form of an ordinary human body-mind. Expressing itself in the form of body sensations, and noticing that these body sensations all have a location, they all have an arrangement, they have a place where we feel them. And clearly this is essential for survival. To potentially know where pain is occurring in order to move away from it or to heal it. So look at life even now exerting itself. All of the complexities of our body working behind the scenes without any effort from us, aside from occasionally refueling, occasionally resting. Such a simple interface for such a complex and rich potential. Noticing how essential this visual aspect of our mind is to this process. Right now we have a sense of space, a world within which we can navigate. Sometimes we marvel at how whales or birds could find their way each season thousands and thousands of miles and know the exact spot they need to spawn or rest. But it's the same technology we can observe now. Although ours is a little different. Our sense of space is very clear around the body. A little bit clear around our environment. And then flashes of details when we need to access something in particular, like where we left our car or how to get to a location we've been to before. Recognizing that this is life, expressing itself in the form of mental seeing. And as far as we know, a day will arrive when we don't have access to this anymore. What we call the death process. And as frightening as this might be, recognizing that first, the thing we are afraid we might lose is here, now. How often do we appreciate it richly enough? And that even our imagined future, our imagined demise, is this same force, expressing itself now in the form of imagination. If we can connect with, appreciate, and enjoy the experience of this living human body-mind, even for an instant, when we truly are finding the joy of being alive. So allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes, eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point as they fully open. Noticing the same sense of space and location, the same sense of a body extending out below. The same imagined expansion from life deep in the ocean. To this time, all of this is still occurring, the mind still making sense of the world. In this way, allowing this appreciation to be the great teacher that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. What was that experience like? What happened, and what do you like now? Ooh. Little stretch. Nothing wakes up the system like a little contemplation of death. Not that we need to slip into more morbid reflection, but it can be helpful at times. So folks, what in fact was that like? What happened, and what do you like now? As folks begin to type up their reports, just a reminder here, some folks already know the drill, but I encourage everyone to write what just happened in your experience, what occurred. Not necessarily the things we thought about, but sensorially, what was the experience like? I've been striking this balance recently between, especially with this type of meditation, between sort of narrative and self-exploration or self-experiencing, the phenomenological and the narrative. And that is likely to, at times, bring us into a lot of thinking, and then at times bring us into a lot of awareness of the sense activity that's occurring. So what was that like? What happened, and what are you like now? Okay. Excellent, excellent. So folks, okay, well, I'm trying to think of what comes next. News is that we're hopefully going to have a guest here on the live stream next week. We're thinking about doing an entire week, we'll see how it goes, of one guest. And the idea here would be that on Monday, they would guide their best piece of meditation technology, most interesting thing that they're working on. Wednesday would be me guiding the most interesting thing that I've found in meditation technology, or something that they're interested in that I've worked on. And then Friday would be, again, the people's choice. You get to decide what kind of meditation, what details, what things we cover and explore in that particular practice. So that's the general idea. If that sounds interesting, let us know. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, good times, good times. Okay, so Jean says, my awareness of the little screen in my mind is getting sharper. Excellent, very good. You said something about the mind mirroring our environment. That really struck me. Yeah, so the people will often say, oh, I don't see anything in my mind when I observe the world. Here's the thing, is that if you right now just close your eyes, and I can point at the door in my house, you can point at various things around, right? The mind is producing a copy of our physical environment, but not one that is so detailed, right? It's if it were too detailed, right? Really, really down into the fibers of this, this microphone and all the, et cetera, it wouldn't be helpful to navigate the world if the whole world were that detailed, right? It's also not so big picture that it's like, oh, look, we're a little dot on a map, and like we can't find we're trying to reach for a glass of water or find our way to the bathroom at night. That doesn't work. So it renders the world in a scale that makes sense for this system to function and interact with the world. So we have this experience of, I close my eyes, I can see this sort of general, vague kind of outline of my environment in order to navigate it. It's like a low resolution version of seeing. The mind mirrors our external senses internally in order to not only allow us to navigate the external world more easily, but also to learn and understand our exterior world and internalize it, so that we can then, pass it on to generations, or for ourselves know that when we go to this tree, there's always nuts there, so it's in this direction, even though we can't see it anywhere over the horizon. It's the set of skills that, a young 13-year-old Sacagawea used in order to guide Lois and Clark across the entire United States, because she had made that trip when she was a child, and so she remembered how to get there. And it's that set of tools. And that's relevant in a number of ways, one of which is psychological. We are internalizing our visual and spatial and experiential world in order to make sense of the world. So if we've had experiences, especially over a long period of time, those are going to be traced on and etched on our inner experience, and we're going to use that as a map of the world. This is a basic description of psychology. It's not just the mental visual aspect, it's the emotional aspect, mental audio. If we heard certain sounds, the mind will produce these sounds. But that is the sort of structure of our own psychology, is this mirroring of our outside world. The thing is, it's not a perfect mirror. It is a mirror that is, it will tend towards noticing the worst things and the most dangerous things and the most painful things first and for the longest. It is meant to help us survive and pass genetic material forward. It is not built on its own to make us feel fulfilled and happy. That's a possibility, but that is not its function. Its function is to pass genetic material forward. So that strikes me too, that idea that the mind mirrors our environment. So Sporty Race Girl says, very moving. That's lovely. I'm glad to hear that. I became aware of fear in the belly and and my hamstrings. Interesting. Okay, well that's interesting material. A fear like jumping off a cliff. When you said it was not death but life that was right here, it made me cry and felt a release. That's so sweet. Thank you so much for that, sharing that. That really makes me very happy. It's really true that, like, I think this is one of the things of that psychological mirroring that become problematic at times, is that in order to survive, the system will pick the thing that is the scariest to think about, or the most painful to think about, or the most alienating to think about. Worrying about what people think about us, or worrying about, all my examples are thinking about what people think about me, like look at how we look on social media, or did the thing we say, was that cringy or something like this. Worrying about, like, will we achieve X, Y, and Z, worrying about, like, things that can be relatively superficial, or worrying about, like, am I going to have enough to eat when we totally have enough to eat? Things like that. Or will I have enough to survive and we're totally fine surviving? It's going to focus on all these things. And part of the reason why I love this practice is it's such a practical way to prime the system to care about a larger context, which is the fact that what we're experiencing is all of those things. Sure, there's fear and there's anxiety, etc., but that's just one little piece compared to awe and fascination and love and a sense of being held and at peace. And I like using life and the concepts around life as a container for that, because it's a very powerful recognition. Most things that are alive cannot contemplate the fact that they are alive, or contemplate the fact that life is an ongoing force, or an animation that is, populating the world. They just take in sunlight and they, produce acorns, and, there's not a lot of thinking about that process, about how amazing an acorn is. But we, as part of this living force within us, have the capacity to have awe, to imagine, to be inspired. Like, I think that, I'd like to think that, like, a tree could be inspired, but it's very much anthropomorphizing a tree. And I like to think it has a more pure, quiet experience, so it doesn't have all the tumult that we have. But we do have that capacity. So it's like owning it's like owning a super fast race car, and we only use it to, like, go to the end of our driveway to, like, get mail, or we only use it to, like, get away from things that are dangerous at, like, 5 miles an hour. The system has so much richness that we could potentially connect with. And the recognition that all of that richness, everything that you've heard me say, every imagined thing that we've come in contact with at this point, is actually this same force from the primordial ooze of the ocean, expressing itself like beautiful plumage, is very moving for me too. It makes me want to cry a little bit. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Julia says, early on, anger and tension, thoughts telling you, me, and even the body, the mind, to shut up. Totally. Listen, I've been told to shut up in people's minds more than I can probably count. If I had a penny for every time someone's mind told me to shut up, I would have no idea how much money I have. I'm less tense now, but still a little. Some joy is there too. Excellent. Yeah, and again, the goal of meditation is not to reduce tension. That is a myth. It's a nice side effect, but we don't want to use drugs for their side effects. We want to use them for their intended purpose. And the intended purpose of meditation is to know ourselves very deeply. And that can be scary at times. It can be very sad at times. It can be very moving at times. And this practice is one where whoopsie, there's a little thing over here. We're not saying you have to feel moved, you have to feel these certain ways, but it's a possibility, and we want to prime the pump, we want to prime the system, because our perspective of the world is very clearly something we can cultivate. So we want to cultivate that in a way that's mindful and purposeful, and not just in the direction I'm telling you to move, which for me, being in awe of the living experience is, for me, very important. It's helpful for me. It feels like it gives me a lot of hope, and feels really connected to the world, and gives me an opportunity to feel that at any given moment in my life, not just to think about, but to experience very directly. But we can hone our skills in the direction that are important to you. So to find out what those directions are, to know what our values are, and then to build a practice that's based on that, to deliver what's important to us. Well, for me, that's the purpose of meditation. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Nate says, a sense of insignificance of my moment-to-moment sense of importance captured with awe at the outrageousness of the unbroken experiential contact with life. The unbroken part is the part that's the most amazing to me. That if one certain animal had died, if one of my ancestors had not made it, or decided not to mate, or had a problem mating, or whatever, reproduction, all of the death. I mean, think about modern medicine is brand new, effectively. The infant mortality rate is so high, and yet, I mean, even just in humans, it's impossible to imagine, wait, no one died? Not one, there's a perfectly unbroken chain from that point to now, and that's how I'm here. Holy shit. It goes before humans, before primates, before the simple mammals, before it's all the way back. And that concept is awe-inspiring, is one thing, but what's much more awe-inspiring is to really soak in to the way life is expressing itself in this particular moment. As you're listening to me now, not only is it a mind that can make sense of these words, but that can feel relaxation, can feel the temperature, can be, managing all these different pieces, managing our time, managing our what's happening for us, potentially noticing anything that's happening emotionally. All of this richness, all of these layers, all of this complexity, it's mind-boggling, and it's the richest, most all-encompassing thing. And when I say richest, it's incredibly, it's the most impossibly rich thing we could ever experience, because it is experience. Experience is laden with this impossibility. Every cool thing we've ever experienced, every amazing sense that we've ever had, every documentary we've watched, anything we can think of, any possibility for all of the things, is all contained in what is expressing itself in this particular moment, which is this force of life. That is actually the reason this live stream is called The Joy of Being a Live Stream, because of that particular meditation. So hopefully that was fun. Hopefully that was interesting. Any other questions or reports, curiosities, that kind of thing, before we hit the eject button, before we melt away into the living experience of our lives? And I think it's also helpful to know that we get so caught up in the narrative of our little lives. Okay, we're going to end the live stream soon, and then we're going to go on to our lives, go into the world, and we're going to, go about our regular days. That's normal, but even our capacity to imagine what's going to happen for the rest of our day, even our capacity to remember what happened 30 seconds ago, all of this is this same pulsing, impossible flow of life expressing itself in the form of an ordinary human body-mind. To tap into that is fascinating. One, experientially, is you start using these big superlatives. It's like saying orgasmic seems really like limiting in a weird way, but it's basically like this level of like infinite decadence. It's everything you could experience is all actually present and palpable and available now. As weird as that might sound, that is the fruit of meditation that is possibly available. And you can cultivate it. It's just a skill. It's like learning to whittle a friggin' stick is a skill. Learning to appreciate the raw, unbelievable power of existing is a skill. And which would you prefer as a hobby? Okay, so Nate says, point of clarification, what do you call it, this meditation? More specifically, what would another meditation teacher call it? Okay, this is the thing that I want to like emphasize. I'm sure someone else has done this, talked about this, expressed this, etc. I'm, as far as I know, and this is the nice thing about being naive, is it's pretty unique. This is not something that somebody else emphasizes as their thing that is important to them. It is very important to me. Shinzen, our fellow friend, teacher Shinzen, would call it nurture positive. This is simply observing our sensory experience and adding a little bit of appreciation. We're appreciating, and we're using awe in particular as a way to get us to drive the mind to pay attention to our sensory experience as it's currently unfolding. That is, in essence, exactly what we're talking about. In Buddhism, there are, as far as I know, there are meditations on death, in order to make you pay more attention to your living experience. Of course, we have no contact with death. Anything we can have contact with death is imagined, is memory, is planning, is fantasy, and so it is actually an expression of life. I won't get into it because it's a little bit, I feel like it's theoretical and sort of insensitive to sort of imply this, but it's part of the reason why there's, in a sense, no reason, not no reason. There is a reason to not fear death, and partially it's because, the premise is it won't bother us. It's not going to be a thing we avoid or like, oh, this sucks. And even the absence of life, like, oh my God, I don't want to miss this. We won't miss it. We will not miss it. There will be no missing going on. So that's part of the, so in Buddhism, I don't know if there's a specific practice that would be, directed in this way. Zen Mind says, how do you deconstruct the mind? Okay, so specifically I can answer that question. For me, and this comes from my primary teacher, Shinzen Young, the mind is very, very straightforward. And I'll add a little extra Shinzen sometimes doesn't talk about. Two primary elements: audio, video. And so many meditation traditions really skip this. They sort of go to other aspects, which I'll talk about in a second, but they don't deal with these. The mind talks, blah, blah, blah. It has various volume levels. It can be really loud and yelling at us, and at times it can be very, quiet or even silent. People come to meditation and typically want, they say, silent mind good, talking mind bad. That's just a weird stereotype that isn't true. The mind can chatter all at once. If we can be present with that, then or ignore it even, that's, we can still have great meditation. So that's one aspect of the mind. Another aspect of the mind is the seeing part of the mind. This is highly misunderstood, and this is what we did in the meditation today. The part of the mind that sees isn't just things we imagine. So we have the seeing world in front of us, right? You have visual data that's coming in. You can see this. If you close your eyes, you can still detect or know that visual data. So for instance, we did this a second ago, but you can close your eyes and still know where the door is to the room that you're in, or even with your eyes open. You have a sense that there is a world behind you even without looking. Although I use that example, we all have these cameras now and screens that show behind us, so that's often it's like you can actually see it behind you. But the seeing part of the mind is the part of the mind that produces any sense of arrangement, any sense of location, any sense of comparative size or scale. It's what produces the XYZ axis that we experience the whole world as happening on. And I think that a lot of traditions don't talk about that so much. And without that, I think there's a lot of thinking going on that people think is not. They're not thinking. They're just they're practicing. They're meditating when actually the mind is just spinning, various stories, this kind of thing. The other aspect of the mind that I think is important to talk about is what the terms that I like to use are attention and awareness. The mind's ability to zoom into things, the mind's ability to zoom out and hold things that we'd consider multiple things, multiple different objects as one giant collective. Now, with those parts together, we have most of what it means to be a human being, with one exception, which is emotion. The physical sensations in the body, we know this, evolutionarily, dogs, cats have similar parts of the brain where we experience emotion. So there's sensations in the body that push us away from things and pull us towards things and these kind of things. So all of these things together, that produces a combination of those, a constellation of, certain arrangement of those at any given moment, is our sense of self, our sense of world, these different pieces together. So now if you take those components and you start stacking them on top of each other, you start to get more and more complex arrangements of things. So then you get into things like the way the mind shapes the world. So the mind shapes the world into packages of thoughts and ideas and sensorial sort of nuggets, and then says that that's what the world is built out of. It breaks the world into all these little pieces and then says that's what reality is. Those pieces that it breaks the world into, I think in a simple way, you could say that is language. We turn things into objects, and then even without looking or having one in front of you, you know what a pineapple is. The mind will hold that for you as a little package of information. These are obviously cultural. They're obviously part of our, general vernacular, but that's exactly it. We trade in these concepts, and so the mind breaks up this, the world in this way, and then we can all agree, okay, reality is this certain way. We can have a society, we can have, wars and things like this because we have a border that we're going to fight over, these kind of things. These are all components and, ways that the mind organizes the world. One of the central ways that the mind organizes the world in terms of a package or a piece of language, the piece of language is I, me, mine, and it separates the world in a very clean order. There's inside and then there's outside, and it's a very dumb separation. It's very like cavemanish, right? It's like me, my existence, outside of me is world, and like we navigate as though that were a real truth, and whenever we're in threat, we go back to retreat to this experience of me, and now, hey, you're my enemy, and now we need to fight. So that's not only how I deconstruct the world, but also sort of how it can stack up on top of each other and become a problem in our lives. But then there's another question in there, which is technically, what do we do to actually take apart those pieces? And for me, that technical thing is meditation and observing each one of those components separately, and then as to sharpen the skill, and then looking at them all together as they're unfolding, and especially looking at them as they're unfolding right now, looking at them in this particular moment, the way the mind is producing data packages, organizing reality. You're understanding what I'm saying, and if you can feel the mind doing that, if I were speaking a different language, it just wouldn't be organizing the data in this same way, unless it was a language you spoke. Or if, noticing that the mind is organizing this in terms of time, that's another way that the mind is shaping our sense of, the world, is this sense of something moving forward that we have a little thin sliver of access to. We imagine a past, we imagine a future, and the mind is just packaging our experiences in terms of time. All of these are ways that the mind is organizing data. So if we can observe that organizing function currently, watching the mind produce the sense of self, inside, outside, noticing that, it starts to break that down, and it starts to give us the ability to observe the raw sense data. And that's I don't want to say it's advanced. It's not advanced. It's like a, sophomore level of meditation where we can actually see the raw sense data without the conceptual overlays on top. So that is that's to answer that little simple question. That is how I'd answer it in a sort of more extended way. Great question. I love it. And if there are any other questions, I would love to answer those questions. That was super fun. What else, folks? Anything else before we drift away into the ether, slide away into the fun joy of night? Kiki Maxi, thank you so much for your emoji love. Very kind of you. Anything else for folks as it's coming up? Any thoughts? Any thoughts, emotions, cognitions that you want to explore here. I'd be happy to share if I possibly could. Hopefully that was clear. That's a lot of data, big old download there for that little question, but I think it's a good question. Great question. Okay, folks, it always happens that I'm like, all right, cool, and then all the questions start rolling in. So I'll provisionally now say that we're going to slide towards our outro here. If folks don't know, we have a Discord. I'll put that in the chat. You also, P.S., and there's our first initial meditations that we give to every student, new student, were just posted in the chat. Here is our Discord. If you want to join the conversation when we are not live streaming, please feel free to join that Discord. Love to see you there. And then what is the story here? Beep, bop, bop, beep, bop, bop, bop. Oh yeah, okay, so we're going to be back here Wednesday to have more fun, have more of a good time. We're doing more of the same kind of practice. I think we're going to do it in a little bit more rudimentary way. I think I was started with the mind, and it's a lot to chew. So I think we're going to maybe start with the body and then go from there. The challenge is that each time I guide one of these, I have to then say, hey, by the way, remember evolution and remember like this movement and, a lot of thinking. So it's tough, at least when you're starting to do this practice, because it takes a lot of blah, blah, blahing. That answer was awesome. Well, thanks, Rory. Thanks so much for your kind thoughts there. Tuned in late, glad still to grab some of the last minute. Well, I'm very glad you're here with us. Very glad indeed. And of course, as everyone knows, if you put ! links in the chat, you'll get our links for our how to get in contact with us on our website, how to watch our main videos, and then how to watch all the playbacks. That's that last link, Deep Mindfulness 2. Is our that's where we beep up, that's where all the playbacks for these are. So within about 24 hours they appear, and if you ever want to watch a playback, good times. So folks, thank you so much for being here. Very excited. So right now, right here in this particular moment, here's what I'd encourage you to do. I have a wish for you. Take a look around. Notice the visual density of this experience. How much visual data there is, how much detail. That is a lot. It's very powerful. It's also helpful to know that this itself is life expressing itself. This is not just seeing. This is the seeing experience. This is life expressing itself and showing us seeing. So what we're looking at is not just our environment, we're looking at life. Nothing we can look at is effectively not alive, because all we see is life. All we're seeing is life. So in this particular moment, as we look around, taking a moment to enjoy that. Taking a moment to have a kind of internal, wow, because we get to cultivate this skill. We get to cultivate this awareness. And so my wish for you is in this particular moment, and maybe even in other moments throughout your day, to cultivate, connect with, explore, find interest in these various sense activities, all of these things as they occur. To have a nice time to know the seeing experience, to know the feeling experience and the hearing experience, to enjoy this expression. Folks, so great to be with you here, as always. Always a lovely time with you. Love hearing your questions, love hearing your meditation reports, as always. So please, please practice well, take care of each other, have fun, and of course we'll see you very, very soon.